Ladies and gentlemen, now welcome to App State Sports News and Facts Podcast with your host, Jacob Elliott. Hello, Mountain News fans. I'm Jacob Elliott here with App State Sports News and Facts Podcast. Today I have a very special guest, one of my most famous guests I've had in here so far, Mr. Steele. Steele, how you doing, Mr. Steele?
I'm doing good, Jacob. How about yourself today?
Good, sir. I know this is a crazy year. I know everything's been really crazy, but I was first to ask you, how did you get started really with the magazines? That's a question that a lot of people have been asking me.
Yeah, well, I was writing a football newsletter for years, and I would buy all the college football preview magazines that were out there on the market, and they just never gave me enough information. I wrote down every bit of information from the teams, and I barely got one deep, a starting lineup out of the magazines, let alone a two deep. And so I started compiling the information myself, and after doing that for a couple of years, someone walked in my office one day and saw the book I had laid out, which is pretty much like the magazine is laid out right now. And they said, why don't you do that in a magazine format? So we tried it the first year. Way back in 1995, it was black and white on newsprint. We only covered 88 teams. I think it was about 188 pages, which is a far cry from today. But once we got the first one out there, people loved the type of information we were putting out, and they were going to buy it again the next year. So, each year we got more and more subscribers to the magazine. We went to full color after about 5 years, and we've increased. We started covering all the teams. And now we're up to, we've been covering 130 teams, and it's in full color, and it's each year it's gotten a little bit bigger, a little bit better.
Yes, and I definitely know, because a couple of years ago, maybe like 3 or 4, I started getting into college football. The first magazine I ever bought was your magazine, and I was hooked with all the statistics and all the wonderful stuff you did, and it's just, I recommend it for people to definitely check it out. They have not, due to the fact that it's so deep in detail. And no other magazine I've ever read goes as deep as you guys do.
Yeah, we go probably about 4 times the amount of information anybody else. And, we give you the same amount of coverage on the Sun Belt teams like App State, UL Monroe, even Buffalo and Toledo, as we do on Oklahoma and Alabama. 2 full pages, all the information on the same spot on every page. You want to know a score from 4 years ago? It's in there. You want to know who the third string left tackle is for any team? He's in there. You want to know a stat from a team stat from the last 7 years? It's in there. We've got it all covered for you in the magazine, and basically it's all the pieces of information I want to see when I'm looking up a team. It's on the page, plus the complete breakdown on each team on the lefts, where we talk about the write-ups. We actually go through 3 different write-ups, and then I try to talk to as many coaches as I can, talk to 110 of the 130 head coaches. I believe I talked to every Sun Belt coach again this year and go over every team with them. The call takes about an hour, go over every player on the team with them, and I think it gives us the most accurate information out there as well.
Yes, I definitely agree. You actually helped me start my page due to the fact that I was so in love. I wanted to start doing statistics after I stopped playing football because of injuries. But, I started getting the broadcast statistics. You guys really got me, and that's why I am here today. So I just want to thank you, but just want everyone to know that your magazine does go for every team the same. Even the worst team in the whole NCAA still gets the same amount of coverage as everyone else, and that's what a lot of people like. But I want to get off the topic right now and get started. So this year's a crazy year. 2020 is just a year of craziness. I know you publish a magazine, and it's going to be kind of crazy because things are still changing. But I looked at your magazine this year, and I really did like it due to the fact that it's still the same as always. Nothing changed, especially with this hard time. That's what fans wanted to see. But getting off that, so how do you really prepare for this kind of thing after you publish a magazine? I've seen you post more stuff online, updates, but you keep on going with the season? How are you really dealing with that?
Yeah, it's definitely been a little different this year. And, a couple of major things happened magazine-wise. Generally, we always send that last page to the press at the end of May. And this year, the office was shut down for about 2 months because the state of Ohio got shut down. Couldn't have the staff come in. I was coming into an empty office every day. So we actually, at that point, postponed putting out the magazine. Then once we started gearing up again and started talking to the coaches, I decided we would indeed do a magazine. We normally put 6 months of work into this. This year we put about 8 months of work into it because of the extra time needed. But we got the same amount of information that we always do, and we're able to put it out. Went to the press July 8th, however, as opposed to the end of May. And the other big change this year was that we only printed 50,000 copies. Normally we print a couple 100,000. We're everywhere. We're in grocery stores, Walmarts, places like that. This year it's exclusively at Barnes & Noble and Books A Million, the only two booksellers that are out there, or, of course, PhilSteele.com. Now, as far as the changing of the schedules go, that's been a little rattling because right after we put the magazine out, and I'm waiting for it to come back from the printer, the Big Ten announces they're going conference only. And then Pac-12 conference only, everybody starts changing schedules. And I was getting a little worried there, but it came upon a pretty good solution. What we're doing now is we're taking the schedule part of the page, which, by the way, is about 1/10 the amount of information that's on each team page. But we're taking the schedule part, which is the only thing that's changed. We're redoing the angles on the right to make sure they fit the right teams, putting everybody in the right order, and then I'm posting it on Twitter at PhilSteele042, and you can print off those pages and then paste them over your magazine. The benefit is you'll have a heftier magazine that'll last longer during the year, and you'll have the updated schedules in the same format you're used to seeing them every year. So that's probably been the biggest change since the magazine went out. And right now we're just hoping for football season, and I think we're going to play this year.
Yes, sir, I definitely agree. I saw that on Twitter because I run my Twitter account on my Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube page. So follow this, but I've been following you guys all the way since. I know it's hard, but having that schedule change is really hard. But the way you're handling it, I feel like it's really well done, in my opinion. And I pre-ordered mine because I heard there's only going to be a specific amount of numbers, and I've heard, I'm not sure if it's true, your sales are doing pretty well this year, are they not?
Yeah. Naturally, when you have a lot less out there, I think people always want to get their hands on a copy, and we definitely have the hardcore fans. We have some fans that have been getting the magazine since that 1995 year, and they'll show me their stacks where they've got one for each year saved. And unlike the other magazines, I think with the other college football magazines, you buy them, you flip through them, you look who their top 25 is, you toss it on the shelf, throw it away. Mine, people tend to keep the entire year and for future years, and it's a great reference tool as well.
Yes, so I definitely do that. I mean, first of all, when I first got in, I was just starting, so I wasn't too interested. So those are kind of trusted. The last 2 years, I've been keeping them safe because if I can go back and look at your statistics from the New Year statistics, it's only telling my fans, it's the hardest core college football magazine you'll see, and it's very well done, very thought through, and very well meticulously into detail. And I just can't get over that. But the NCAA in the whole, I mean, you hear the MAC, the Pac-12, Big Ten, all these schools, and you hear all this commotion. How do you feel about the rest of the conferences right now?
Well, I'll tell you, I think they're going to get a big benefit this year. You look at the schools that are in the Big 12, the ACC, the SEC, and if they play football in the fall, they are getting an entire year ahead of the Big Ten and the Pac-12. And, if the Mountain West doesn't play, then and the MAC, those schools will also fall behind. And I think what's going to happen is it'll also hurt recruiting in the future. Folks will say, well, the Big Ten will cave its cards in at first glance of something. Meanwhile, the other conferences will keep playing. So I think it's going to really set the Big Ten and the Pac-12 behind if the other conferences play football this year. Because, much like, remember when UAB didn't play football for 2 years and everybody wondered how can they even come back and play? I mean, losing a full year of football, it's like a 1-year death penalty that's thrown upon the school. And that's a tough thing to overcome. So I think it's going to hurt the conferences that don't play this year and really help the conferences that do play. And plus, they're going to probably pick up some transfers from those conferences that aren't playing as we get closer to game time.
Yes, sir. I know definitely what you're talking about right there. Due to app, I mean, for me, I follow apps. Like, we have a lot more recruits coming in. We have some flips. We have our stadiums being updated, and that's really getting our recruits interested and everything. It's just, the UAB, I definitely agree it's going to be like that. But if you see how UAB, I mean, I know they're in the Conference USA, but like the way they're improving each year is just amazing. They They gave us a fight last year. We kind of didn't start so, but I really respect them. They have some, looking at the statistics, they have one of the scariest teams this year. I think in the G5, they may be one of the more underrated teams, but I have to give them credit for the way they played App last year in the New Orleans Bowl.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, you look at UAB, and the job Bill Clark is doing is amazing. I remember when they took the 2 years off and then were returning, folks were saying, you know what, they should spend a year in FCS football because there's no way they can be competitive. They're going to get blown out on a weekly basis. It's going to be ugly. Somehow he kept that team together, and that first year that they came back, even though I think the highest projections might have been 2 or 3 wins for a team coming off of 2 years not playing, UAB went 8-5, made it to a bowl game, and lost to Ohio in the Bahamas Bowl. But then the next year they had an experienced team, went 11-3, and won the CUSA title. And then last year you looked at the team and you said, wow, almost everybody's gone. UAB only has 7 returning starters overall. They're going to struggle. And then they got hit hard by injuries. Quarterback, running back got injured. Somehow they still get to 9-5. So I think Bill Clark is doing simply an amazing job. And as you touched on, Jacob, UAB has got 18 returning starters this year. They're one of the most experienced teams in college football. They look like the best team in CUSA. They've got the best defense in CUSA. And I think they're a team that's going to be poised to really step out on the national landscape with a big year.
Yes, yes. I know there's the UCS, Memphis, Cincinnati, App State, Louisiana, but for me, I'm including that conversation. If UAB can do what it's been doing, I will say that they will be up there with the big dogs sooner or later. I mean, I'm just stunned at how well they've been doing. I know it's an App State thing, but folks, I just want to let you know that we got lucky last year not playing them this year, in my opinion. But UAB, I mean, it's going to go back to the Pac-12, the Big Ten. It's going to be like that. They're going to have a few years, and that's really going to hurt the conference-wise in recruiting, appearance. I mean, the coaches, I'm not getting all the controversy right now. The coaches are kind of getting irritable right now with everything going on, thinking all this different stuff, which I agree with them, but it's just like, it's going to hurt them. And if you look at someone like the Conference USA or Sun Belt, they're going to get more TV time, more appearances, more news time. It's going to help those G5 schools get up to par with other schools right now.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, I think that this year you may even see a G5 team make the playoff. In fact, on my website, philsteele.com, I posted a blog a couple of days ago talking about who my replacement is for Ohio State, because of the 4 teams I had projected to make the Final Four playoff this year, I had Alabama, I had Clemson, I had Oklahoma. Those 3 schools are all playing, but I also had Ohio State. And since Ohio State's not playing, that leaves an opening. And I think the opening could very well be filled by a team like UCF. UCF is a team that had a couple of undefeated seasons, played in 2 New Year's Day 6 bowl games, knocked off Auburn, played a good game against LSU. Last year they had 3 losses. The 3 losses were by a combined 7 points last year. So they were a good team last year, but they were rather inexperienced. And I actually had picked them not to even win their own division last year. I had Cincinnati against Memphis playing in the American Conference title game, and those are the 2 teams that played. But this year, they have 16 returning starters. They're a veteran unit throughout. Their secondary, one of the best in the country. And I think if UCF runs the table and the number 2 teams from the Power 5 conferences all have 2 losses or more, which is likely because the number 2 team will likely have lost the title game in each of those 3 conferences, that opens up the door for UCF to potentially make the playoff this year, and I think they'll get there. And that would be, I think that'd be big not only for the American Conference, but for all the Group of 5 conferences.
Yes, and I agree. That's why I was just about to say, even though App State and 3-1 make the playoffs, UCF is doing this long. They have a little more speed ahead of us. But if that does happen, it can open up a whole new direction for the College Football Playoff Committee and for the G5 conferences, not just the American. I mean, who knows? Maybe App runs the table, maybe UCF, maybe Memphis. But like you said, if some team from the G5 runs the table and really stomps their other team's heads in, we may see that, and that may be a huge game changer for the college football landscape of the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree. And I do think App State's got that potential. I mean, you look at the Sun Belt Conference. I think Troy is a much improved team this year. Louisiana is probably the biggest threat in the Sun Belt. to App State because Louisiana is loaded this year. I love their offensive line, love their run game. They've got 14 returning starters, and they are one of the most experienced teams in the country at number 13. Another team to watch for is Arkansas State. You know, they had a lot of problems last year, quarterback injuries, defensive injuries, wiped out their defensive front seven, but they've got two capable quarterbacks coming back. They've got 15 returning starters. So the Sun Belt's quality league, and should App run the table in the Sun Belt and have all the other teams have two losses out there, then I think they would have that opportunity as well. I just think UCF has a little more cachet heading into the season, and the fact they've been in the national spotlight, they've been in the argument before, and they've played in a couple of New Year's Day 6 bowl games already.
Yeah, and I agree with you. That's what I was saying. I mean, how App would really like it, UCF just has a little more track speed to go there, and that's what I see. I'm not mad at that, but if they do get in, if App runs the table another year against them and we have 2 Power 5 wins, we could go in. I mean, it's just going to be a huge change if a G5 school does get in. And speaking of Arkansas State, I was talking to their person that I talked to inside, and when he told me last year they had injuries. The coach Weiss died, he went away. They had all these problems, and they still made it to a bowl game and won. And I did not know all this, and I was just stunned. I mean, for me, Arkansas State, Louisiana are the best teams besides App in the Sun Belt right now. But for me, Arkansas State may have a little edge. I don't know. But for me, hearing all they conquered and all they have coming back, it was just eye-opening seeing that program. I mean, I know we're rivals kind of-ish, but, I mean, I was very shocked and very happy to see the Sun Belt have a team like that come back and do what they did and fight for their life and still win a bowl game.
Yeah, and Blake Anderson's doing a really good job at Arkansas State, and he did go through a lot last year. Yeah. His wife was ill and then passed away prior to the season. He missed the first game or so. But we did come back and, you know, had his quarterback go down and Logan Bonner. The defense was so banged up last year for Arkansas State that they opened with a 4-man front, and they just didn't have enough defensive linemen to play. They ended up going to a 3-man front and sometimes played 2 defensive linemen. In fact, this year they've changed schemes. They've gone to a 3-4 defense from a 4-3 defense due to the fact that last year they got a little bit of traction playing the 3-4 defense, and it's probably easier to recruit linebackers than it is big 280-pound defensive linemen. So last year's injuries, though, I mean, they gave up, I think it was against Georgia State last year, they gave up 722 yards and 39 first downs, but they were missing practically their entire defensive front seven. So great job last year by Blake Anderson. I do expect big things from him this year.
Yes, and just everyone's just talking all this stuff, but for me, looking into all this, it couldn't really hurt if things succeed and we do play football, which I believe we will. It will definitely help all these teams still playing bump up and bump like the Mountain West down. Now, the Mountain West, they have decent teams, Boise State, Wyoming, and if they don't play this year, that could also set them back, and that could set Boise State back and move App State above Boise State in some fans' minds, in my opinion.
I agree. And like I said, I think that the 3 Power 5 conferences that are playing are getting a step ahead of the Big Ten, the ACC, mm-hmm. and you have to go the same route with the Group of 5 conferences that are playing. CUSA, Sun Belt, the American Conference will all take big steps up over the Mountain West and the MAC if that's the way it shakes out this year, which I think it will.
Yes, and speaking of the Sun Belt, I've been talking to people, I've been doing research. People, I mean, I don't know how you feel. People just don't really understand how new the Sun Belt is, in my opinion. And due to that, they just rank them kind of down low. But for me, after talking, doing a lot of research this year, the Sun Belt is fairly new, and the teams they have are up-and-coming teams. Georgia State, look at Sean Elliott, look what he's doing there. Coastal they got some players back. South Alabama, new facility, a lot of good recruits coming in. I've talked to them. ULM, I've not talked to them. I'm not going to, but there's reasons my fans know. But just looking around the whole Sun Belt, I can only see improvement in the coaches and all the players. I mean, the Sun Belt is not like Mountain West level, but everyone I've talked to says it's close due to the fact of how newly the Sun Belt is and how much talent keeps on coming year and year.
Yeah, and I think you take a look at a coach like Sean Elliott at Georgia State, what he's done there. I don't think they were expected to be in a bowl game in any of their 3 years, and he's been to 2 in a row, and he's got 16 starters coming back. Coastal Carolina, Jamie Chadwell almost had them in a bowl last year. They went 5-7. One game away from it. They had a 3-point loss, 2 3-point losses, and a 1-point loss during the year. Could easily, basically one play away from making a bowl, and now he's got 14 returning starters coming back. So I agree. The overall play of the Sun Belt is improving, and South Alabama is probably the poster boy of that. South Alabama is a team that Steve Campbell took his lumps after coming in, and they only won 3 in 2 games his first 2 years. Last year, they were one of the least experienced teams in the country. This year, they've got 15 returning starters coming back. So I think South Alabama sort of shows the strength of the bottom part of the Sun Belt Conference, which is really the part to look at in overall strength of conference ratings.
Yes, and this the lower half too. We look at someone like Texas State. I've been talking to their players and their insiders. They have somewhere around 47 to 45 new players just this year come in. So they may not do that well this year, but they're going to have an experienced team coming up in the next few years.
Yeah, and I've been talking to Coach Spavital since his days at West Virginia, and I think he's doing a good job building this team. They need to get more consistent quarterback play. I thought they struggled last year when Tyler Vitt was at the helm. He had 11 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. If they improve the quarterback play, which I think they will, they've got pretty good running backs with Brock Sturgis and Caleb Twyford. The offensive line has to be rebuilt a little bit this year, but the defense is going to have more bite than it did last year, led by a player like defensive tackle Kavion Patton. So I think you will see a much improved Texas State. First-year head coaches usually struggle in their first year, and I don't think the team is in all that great a shape, left by Everett Withers. So Spavital's, it looked like it'll probably be a 3-year process in the rebuild. I still think it's going to be a 3-year process for them, but I believe they'll be contending for a bowl game next year.
And I can definitely see it. I mean, looking around the whole Sun Belt, including App lost all of their non-conference games. A huge game against Wake, which Wake does not want to play us. Everyone wants to make arguments about that, but our coaches and our AD have spoken publicly, and they've been pretty disappointed at Wake and pissed. We lost Wisconsin due to the Big Ten not canceling. We lost UMass, which is not really a huge loss, and we lost Morgan State. But with the schedules we have, we scheduled Marshall. We add another date with them. We scheduled Charlotte. Add another date with them. We scheduled Campbell. I mean, for me, even though we lost to 2 Power 5 schools, having 2 schools like Marshall and Charlotte close old rivalry with Marshall is better, in my opinion, for fans because it's a rivalry game. It's going to be good. It's going to be really well done, and it's going to be hopefully played like it always has been. I hate losing those 2 Power 5 schools, but I love the replacements we are getting as of now.
Yeah, and App State fans love traveling to Charlotte. If you remember 2 years ago, App State was off that big game against Penn State. You figured a letdown factor, and I thought App State had the crowd edge in that game. So it was I love the way App State fans travel. Oh yeah,
our fans, we love each other. We love everything. Sometimes it does get hot-headed if something doesn't go our way. But the thing is that when we went to Penn State, I wasn't there. I was in the Charlotte game. But when we went to Penn State, I've seen videos and talked to people. They said that the Penn State fans gave them a round of applause, stood up as they exit. I'm just saying we are giving respect because we are beating or coming close to beating teams that are nationally known. And last year we beat South Carolina and UNC, 2 schools that no one would have thought we'd beat, really. But we beat them, and we're getting more respect because we're taking these teams that are nationally known down to the wire. And I'm glad we're not playing UNC this year again, due to the fact that their quarterback is going to be one of the best quarterbacks, I think. Once Trevor Lawrence leaves, in my opinion, he may be one of the talked about quarterbacks because he is a really talented kid.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Sam Howell at North Carolina is a guy that took over last year as a freshman. And keep in mind, North Carolina was number 105 on my experience chart heading into the year. They're now number 30 on my experience chart. So Mac Brown's got 2 great recruiting classes he's brought in. He has an experienced team and one of the best quarterbacks in the country in Sam Howell.
Yeah, and I just think they're going to improve every year. I mean, I'm glad we beat them. The fans weren't, but I'm glad we beat them just to kind of give more respect to our name because we haven't beaten the team since Michigan P5, and we beat 2 teams this year. I mean, it was just huge for our program to have something like that. And speaking of that, I go to Louisville now, and I look at how Scott Satterfield, old head coach, is doing, and I'm just amazed at how well he's turned that program around in 1 year, won a bowl game, and has a lot of people returning. I mean, I'm just dumbfounded. He's a great coach. I knew that, but I didn't know he could take a Louisville team like that and automatically push them the way he's done.
Yeah, and Louisville had a team that, if you look at what they had the previous year, was a dumpster fire under Bobby Petrino, and one that ended ugly. And taking over, you had to figure, let's hope for 3 or 4 wins. And you look at the offense he produced and the players he produced on the offensive side of the ball. And all of a sudden, this was a Louisville team that could play with pretty much anybody, despite what he inherited. I mean, Mikael Cunningham is a dynamic QB. Javian Hawkins rushed for 1,500 yards. He's got 2 dynamic receivers and Tutu Atwell and Des Fitzpatrick. And the defense has to be improved over last year. So I do think Satterfield did one of the best jobs in college football coaching last year. And I look at the talent he left behind at App State. App State turned out to have a pretty good year.
Yeah, and a lot of people is saying that it was Elijah Drinkwitz. I mean, for me, I don't think it was Scott Satterfield's player. All we knew is that Drinkwitz was coach. He had good coaches, and some of them were coming back. But for us, we feel like we won because he left to go to Missouri. Missouri's taking a chance because they don't know if he can coach and recruit. But App has a good, one of my all-time favorites. I've met Jerry Moore, I met Scott Satterfield, but Sean Clark is just my all-time favorite. I mean, he is just a guy that loves App State, wants to be there, wants to see them succeed. I just had not ever seen a coach that loves a program so much and wants to do everything in his power to keep them where they are.
Yeah, I agree. Great hire. Not somebody that's going to leave after a year or two. Remember what Arkansas State went through. I think they had 5 straight years where they had a new head coach, and it really set the program back. Anderson has now brought stability there, and Sean Clark's going to provide that stability. And as you touched on, I think last year was Coach Satterfield's players, and now Clark is going to come in with the same type of players, I believe, and it's an experienced team. I mean, Zach Thomas is still there at QB. Harrington and Williams at running back. This is a very talented App State team that probably be favored in all their games this year.
Yes, and just want to ask you another question, though. Do you know one of our favorite players last year that got injured, Cameron Peoples? He's the guy that everyone's been looking at. Do you know anything about him?
Who was that now? I missed that.
Sorry, Cameron Peoples. He's projected to be one of the best running backs.
Okay, yeah, Cam Peoples. So he's a freak of an athlete. I mean, he's got great size and speed. Now, he missed the spring as well, so I have him third on the depth chart because of the fact I'm wondering, will this guy be 100% healthy? But you're looking at 6'2", 215 pounds, and a great athlete. So, the problem is he's playing behind Harrington and Williams, and but I think he definitely, if he's healthy, he could really have a big year.
And that's like something for the whole App State. It's just we have a culture of winning. We want to win. We got coaches that want to be there, know the tradition. Where our stadium has just been beautifully updated. And I mean, it's just only up from here. I mean, maybe 1 year, 2 we may fall a little bit, but I mean, I don't see us failing too terribly in the near future just because of what we built at App and what Scott Satterfield and Jerry Moore traditions they have built and brought and staying in place with a former coach and former player. They're just going to stay in the same place pretty much because of what they built, and it's not been tampered with.
Yeah, absolutely. And you could definitely see that. And last year really cemented that fact. Even losing Satterfield, App State had the same great year. So I think it's everything has been built to exactly where it should be.
Yeah, I just want to ask you one final question before I let you go, Mr. Steele. What is your overall view of the whole NCAA football? Like, what do you think is going to happen? What do you think, who's going to win? Like, just give me your inside opinion, per se.
Well, I'm hoping that the ACC, Big 12, and SEC play, and if they do, we're going to have a 14 playoff at the end of the year. We'll have a true national champ. 8 of the 10 players that I have as my top Heisman candidates are all still playing this year. So I think it'll be great for college football. And my Final Four would be Alabama, Clemson, Oklahoma, and UCF at this point. And, for the group of five's sake, you hope that UCF wins a game, because that would make the case stronger in future years. So it's should be a fun year, provided we're playing football, and hopefully everybody sticks to their guns and plays. Little gun shy after what we've been going through this summer, but I think we will play, and if we do, it's going to be fun.
Thank you very much, Mr. Steele. This was Steele, guys. Go follow him on Twitter and go look up his magazine. Go get his magazine, his website. One of the most talented insiders I've ever talked to, and one of the most talented magazines. I thank you so much, Steele, for joining me. And this is Mountaineer Fans, Jacob Elliott, and I'm signing out for now.